Is the Royal Enfield Continental GT still worth it in 2025? That's the question that we're going to answer today in this up-to-date review of this machine, because quite a few things changed on the bike, and also the bike has been first unveiled in 2017 at the EICMA Motorcycle Show, and we right now have the spy shots already seen of the Continental 750 most likely, and the next EICMA is coming and winter is coming. So really interesting point to start talking about this motorcycle, and it's especially an interesting bike to me because that's the bike I wanted when I got a motorcycle license. I wanted to buy a Continental GT and couldn't. And at the same time, it's a not that much talked about motorcycle because it got released at the same time as the Interceptor, and it was a bit of an unideal release strategy back then from Royal Enfield because they just started releasing their bikes and then realized, oh, it's better if we release the bikes once at a time, and that's how it kind of got overshadowed by the Interceptor at the end of the day. The bike is also pretty close to the Interceptor because it basically has the same power figures of 47 horsepower and 52 Newton meters of torque out of its 648 oil and air-cooled engine. However, it's a bit lighter, coming in at 214 kilos because it doesn't have a center stand, which I think is fitting for a cafe racer. Yeah, talking about it being a cafe racer, this is basically the more sporty option. The bike being more sporty is mostly reflected in the clip-on handlebars and higher foot pegs. The bike all in all is gorgeous, especially here in the Mr. Clean colorway, adding a chromed out tank. The way that the bike is looking, it's just yearning for the touring single seat. The look of the bike also has a special effect on the riding experience that we will get to in a second. So, the motorcycle's body position is really nice, I have to say. You have this sporty leaned forward position and it's not uncomfortable. You can ride this bike for a really long time and not get uncomfortable. I now did all my riding with this bike. I didn't drive my car for the time I had it, went everywhere with it, long highway rides, city, and it did really well, never had any back pain. And also, it feels good to sit on the bike. A lot of the fun factor of the Continental GT comes from its body position, because you have that sporty bike feel that makes you feel confident, makes you a bit a nuisance in traffic, because like you feel like in the opening scene of the Tron movie, just constantly going in and out of the cars, which don't do that, but like it gives you the desire to do that most definitely. And with that, it has a nice sport touring stance. Yeah, so let's get this motorcycle on the road and see how it actually handles, because there are a lot of questions to answer for this motorcycle, because also these bikes got more expensive. The prices on these bikes raised from 6 to 10% over the last few years, with this bike now coming in at 7,690 to 8,030 in Germany. That bought you an MT-07 some years ago. So there are going to be some hard questions that the Continental GT will have to answer for. But first of all, let's see how it does in the day-to-day riding. The test time frame I had with the Royal Enfield Continental GT 650 was kind of the best and the worst at the same time. I was driving a lot and everywhere with the motorcycle, but that was because my city at the moment has a big issue with unresolved construction sites, leading to me always having to take the bike, because every drive with the car takes over 1.5 hours and the only way to get somewhere is with the bike going through the traffic. With this being quite stressful and quite tense, it was basically the perfect stress test for how the body position of the Continental GT feels after a long time, because wiggling through traffic with clip-on handlebars is usually not a nice experience. However, I didn't have any back pain during any of the time of the 3 weeks that I spent with the Continental GT, which is definitely a big compliment to a bike of this kind. I'm talking so much about how well the body position works because usually a setup like this is a guarantee for back pain and pain in your wrist. And even on longer like highway drives, it was perfectly fine, which is genuinely impressive, making this bike really nice for everyday riding. Another thing I really enjoy when hopping around town on this motorcycle is, I don't know if you know these articles from GQ magazine about like famous actors and how they ride their motorcycles, with a few photos of them just like randomly somewhere in a city. And you literally feel a bit like being in one of those articles when you wiggle through the traffic and stand in front of the row at the stoplight and then accelerate faster than all the cars. And like other Royal Enfields have this too, but they more feel like enthusiast machines, mainly about the look, while with the clip-on handlebars on the Continental GT, it hints at a practical explanation for the over-the-top looks. However, how much of a more sporty motorcycle is in the Continental GT? So behind me is one of my favorite motorcycle roads that I like riding in my free time. It's a bit away outside of the city, so a bit of driving with this bike, and it's a good point to talk about the handling of the Royal Enfield Continental GT, because in 2025 the frame and the design of the bike is almost 10 years old, and Royal Enfield rapidly improved since the 2000s and basically always had this thing that they would improve on one component quite drastically and leave the rest behind and then slowly upgrade everything. And the frame has its charm because it makes it feel like a genuinely old motorcycle that is especially feelable in a nice way on the Royal Enfield Interceptor. The handling being pretty good on a tight cornered road like this also goes for the tires, because if you look at older reviews of this bike when it first came out, it had not so great tires, and I experienced this myself with having an Interceptor with these old tires. And now on this bike there are Centaur GTs or something, or STs I think they're called. They're not really a well-known brand. You see, this road is popular with motorcycles. Yeah, and basically these new ones handle the road a lot better, and also the weakness of the older tires was rain, and this one handles great in the rain. Here's a clip of how I'm riding it over a karting track, and you can see I can push it still pretty hard before I start to feel the tires are going, and I think that's a great improvement. However, the tires don't matter that much if you're going on the used market for the older models, because they've been all replaced by now. Also, a thing that has to be said, when the turns get wider and the speed is higher, you more feel the drawbacks of the Continental GT, with you constantly shifting between third and fourth, because they end in the usable zone, like in between there where you would be riding these corners. And on top of that, there is a pretty major handling flaw in the bike at high rates of speed. And that is that there's basically constant instability as soon as you reach 130, and it gets worse the faster you go. So you basically have to get used to the motorcycle constantly wiggling underneath you, and this could also get potentially dangerous, because if you hold down to the handlebars tightly, it will travel through your body, making the problem a lot worse. And if you slightly let go of the handlebars, it also gets worse. I just talked about the handling issue of the Royal Enfield Continental GT at high speed, and this is not just an issue because I live in Germany and you reach that speed relatively quick. You also reach it in a lot of other countries pretty quickly, because yes, the speed limit is maybe lower, but it's a motorbike, you know? And I forgive the bike for that, definitely, because if you look at the other bikes, the Interceptor and the Bear, this is the most fun bike, because it's all the hype about the Scrambler and stuff right now. Everyone wants a Scrambler. When can you actually use a Scrambler? Like the actual usability of something like the Bear 650 is not as high as this bike, which feels like a pretty cool experience and pretty fun every time you drive on a highway on-ramp, because then instantly you feel the lower handlebars, and in that way basically a cafe racer is the more fun machine, 100%. And that's genuinely what I really enjoy about the bike. And also a lot of people like write me emails and write in the comments, oh yeah, I can't decide between the Classic and the Bear, can you make a comparison? These bikes are really, really different. It doesn't make sense to make a comparison, but here's your answer. The bike is gorgeous and also is basically the Bear 650. The Bear 650 is also leaned forward. And yes, it's the Scrambler. It's the same frame at the end of the day. I took this bike a bit of road. It all works pretty fine. And if you occasionally want to ride down one or other gravel road, it perfectly will do it. However, having talked about the handling issue, it's something where the bike shows its age. Leads to a few other things. the bike raised in price. And I earlier started the video with saying that I wanted this motorcycle when I started motorcycle riding. And Royal Enfield wants a lot more younger customers and wants to approach these kind of people. Yes, all motorbikes got more expensive, but no one has more money. And at some point the cutoff comes where it's just like, well, I guess I'm not buying a bike then. Especially when you're trying to get younger customers, because here in Germany at the moment still a lot of like older folks are buying Royal Enfields. I think this is also the case in the UK, and in some other European countries it starts to look a bit different, but they're also differently priced there. And as a young person, I earlier said I really wanted this bike, but I couldn't get it. And that dynamic of course gets worsened. However, there is light at the horizon, because the Royal Enfield Continental 750 is releasing. There is no release date yet, it's not been announced, but there are spy shots. And also, winter is coming, EICMA is coming. So, what is going to happen? The Continental 750 is going to get announced, the prices are going to drop. People are going to trade in their motorbikes. In general, winter is coming. Winter is motorcycle buying season, because no one can ride, so prices go down. So definitely look at the market for what happens when the Continental 750 gets announced, and also what happens when it gets released. Because I remember looking at the Royal Enfield 411 when the 450 came out, and the prices went all the way down to $2,500 for like with 3,000 or 4,000 miles on the clock, which I think you could realistically, maybe if like some get traded in, the prices for a few weeks could drop down to the 5-6 grand mark. So definitely on the used market, this gets really interesting. Look for the traded in models. That's the moment to get this bike. For 8 grand, still a cool bike, but not great at the end of the day. Another thing when talking about the Continental GTs on the used market is that this newer model came with these really thick grips, and they don't really feel fitting for a retro bike. And the older one came with these really thin, nice ones, and that then also with the shaking in the handlebars, you can forgive that a lot more if it gives you more of that authentic retro feel. And the grips are a contact point. Contact points on motorcycles are so important for the feel of the bike, because it's what you basically touch all the time. And from the older bikes that you have on the used market, they feel really good. And also some of the older colorways, this bike is now offered in less colorways here in Europe, are so gorgeous. Like this is the bike from Lutz, the dude who I always pick the bikes up from, and it's just gorgeous. And he has the bit older one, and in that regard, it's really nice. Really like it. And also this bike motivates to customize a lot more, because yes, it's a quite good package, but with it being a bit sporty, the exhaust pipes are heavy as shit. So when you lose them, you're going to get quite a bit more power to weight ratio out of this motorcycle, which makes it interesting. The engine is a great characterful package with a different sound that is really nice. And I'm in general in a bit of a difficult spot with this bike, because I love this bike. It's fun. It's the most fun out of the Interceptor it's the most fun out of the Interceptor and the Bear and this bike. And I maybe am actually going to convert my Interceptor to this machine, because I enjoy it so much. However, with a few of the quirks, for 7,690 to 8,030, I have to say, nah. This is one for the used market. This is one for the used market. It's still a decent bike for that kind of money, but like these bikes are absolutely brilliant at the price that they used to kind of go for. And these 6 to 10% price increase do it. Like they make a difference. And however, this is where it gets interesting. The Royal Enfield Continental 750 is releasing. Yes, there's no release date, but the EICMA is coming, winter is coming, and Royal Enfield in that rhythm kind of releases a bike. And then what is going to happen when the Continental 750 comes out? The announcement comes, prices are going to drop. The bike is going to come out, prices are going to really drop, because then people trade in their bikes. At the same time, you still have kind of a distributor problem in some European countries. Germany, I don't know how it developed in the UK. They also had a similar thing that they still have to sell off old bikes. And then the prices are going to look better. And then it's time to go for this bike. So definitely, if you like this motorcycle, look at the market for the next half year, and then when it looks good, go for it. Right now, for the new price, I would stay away. So that's it for this video. Definitely hype the video in the comments and subscribe, and see you guys in the next video.